public about its dangers. No one should be in a relationship where they are degraded, disrespected, intimidated, or threatened. Love shouldn't hurt. And if someone is being hurt in a relationship, there are alternatives available and ways to find help. Sadly, way too many people who suffer abuse or domestic violence don't know how to seek help, but it is available, and that's what this evening is all about. So we should remember that when we talk about domestic abuse, we're not just talking about domestic violence. Domestic abuse also includes any attempt by one person in an intimate relationship to dominate or control the other person. Abuse can be psychological and emotional as well as physical. Such abuse can happen to anyone. It does not discriminate. It happens to people of all ages, incomes, ethnicities, occupations, races, cultures, genders, sexual orientations, socioeconomic classes, and religion. It can happen to babies, teens, and the elderly. It may be happening to your child's teacher, a friend, or you. The stresses and restrictions caused by the pandemic made things worse. Increased stress caused by economic instability, lack of safe, stable childcare, or a lack of pre-pandemic social support worsened already tenuous situations. So during this season of Valentine's Day, the harsh reality is that too many people are dealing with someone who wants to control them, cut them off, and either physically or emotionally dominate them. Help is available. And we're here this evening to tell you that this is the way out. So we have two speakers and we have two dogs. Sorry about that. The first speaker is Dr. Denise McCain, the director of the Prince George's County Family Justice Center. Dr. Denise McCain is a foremost domestic violence expert, researcher, visionary leader, and trailblazer in the movement to break the cycle of violence with more than 25 years of experience in the field of domestic violence. Dr. McCain has worked on the front lines as a grassroots advocate and domestic violence program director. For the past almost 6 years, Dr. McCain has worked as the director of the Prince George's County Family Justice Center. It provides comprehensive services to survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, and elder abuse with 23 multidisciplinary co-located government and nonprofit agencies. Dr. McCain is the recipient of numerous awards, along with other efforts undertaken to raise visibility and awareness around the issue of violence against women. Our second speaker is Prince George's County State's Attorney Aisha Braveboy. State's Attorney Braveboy is the top law enforcement officer in Prince George's County. She's responsible for the safety, security, and the administration of justice for more than 900,000 residents. She has implemented innovative and successful reforms to the criminal justice system to reduce mass incarceration while protecting the welfare of our community. During Maryland's 2020 legislative session, Ms. Braveboy and her team worked tirelessly with lawmakers and community partners in Annapolis to ensure that the assault in the first degree strangulation law was successfully passed. State's Attorney Braveboy recognized that survivors of domestic violence are 750% more likely to become a victim of domestic violence homicide. In October of 2020, Ms. Braveboy announced the creation of the county's multi-agency strangulation protocol, which is designed to identify victims of strangulation, provide immediate access to the appropriate healthcare and social services needed, and to collect and preserve evidence needed in the prosecution of their crimes. And we talked about that last year as the main issue during this forum. When she was in the House of Delegates as a delegate, she was chair of the Legislative Black Caucus. Thank you both for being here. And if Dr. McCain, if you could just give us a quick hello and update, we'd like to hear from you.
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much, Councilmember Ivey, for the invitation and opportunity to join you this evening and talk about this subject, domestic violence, which unfortunately it's still hidden behind closed doors, and it's not something that we speak about enough. So I applaud you and thank you so much for your leadership and taking the time every year to host this event. I'd also like to acknowledge the Honorable State's Attorney, Aisha Braveboy. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening as well. So, I'm going to, if you could put up the slide for me, talk about this issue. And, you said love shouldn't hurt. Well, it doesn't hurt either. Unfortunately, there's a saying, one that I think about with domestic violence, is that it's always the ones closest to you that hurt you the most. And that really resonates, and it speaks to intimate partner violence. This is a crime. It's an issue that we know, unfortunately, only affects individuals who are in these relationships, particularly by definition. But it's a growing problem. And as you pointed out, Councilmember Ivey, the pandemic really had its way with this situation, if you will, because survivors were unfortunately trapped in their homes with their abusive partners. And we did see an increase. Even though we're out of the pandemic, not really, because it's still going on, we know that. And what we're seeing is that there are more cases and they're more serious, and there's also a direct correlation to mental health. Many of the people that we're serving right now are seeking services for mental health. And I just want to point out, just within the last 7 days, which I'm sure everyone has seen, the 2 homicides that took place in Washington, D.C., a 27-year-old mother of 3 children, Serena Johnson, who was stabbed to death by her abusive partner, 27-year-old, and 2 of the 3 children were in the car and witnessed it. Just this past Saturday on 295, another 32-year-old mother of 6 children, Passion Pleasant, was stabbed to death by her 30-year-old boyfriend. And he happened to be wearing a GPS tracking ankle bracelet. And if that wasn't enough, he also had a history of abuse with 3 other women that had protective orders out against him. So what does that do? What does that tell you? It tells you that not only is this real, it's also, in my opinion, it's causing us, we should really take a closer look at how we are handling these cases, holding offenders accountable, because as long as they're able to walk or not be held accountable, we're going to continue to see this. You spoke about the forms of abuse, Councilmember Ivey. You talked about a number of things which I would have addressed. As you see here, it's not just physical, it manifests itself in many ways, to include all of the others. This is February, Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, and digital abuse, I just want to point out, is one of the primary tools that is used by teens to stalk and to harass girlfriends, boyfriends in these types of relationships. But the one thing that I will leave you with and say to take away is to understand that this is really all about power and control. Just one person exerting their power over another to control them. And again, as you see, all of the tactics that are used within that process to get what it is that they're looking for, which is, again, to hold that person within their control. So for those of you that are watching or participating in this, very quickly, what can you do? It's most important to understand and recognize the signs. One of my favorite sayings from one of my favorite authors is Maya Angelou, who says, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. They know themselves much better than you do. And that is so real. The problem with domestic violence, intimate partner violence, is that we don't pay attention to the signs. Victims have a tendency to disregard, overlook what is very clear in many instances, signs of abuse, or they simply don't realize that what they're experiencing is actually abusive behavior. So very quickly, if you're in a relationship or you know someone and you see that the abuser is trying to get in this relationship very quickly, wants to move things from 0 to 100 in no time, that should be a warning sign to you. Isolating, constantly jealous, not wanting you to be with family and friends, the controlling, having unrealistic expectations, expecting you to do things that, an example, to be with them 24/7. That's not realistic, such that you don't even go to work and function. Past battering or threats. If someone has hit you, threatened you, 9 times out of 10, it's not an isolated incident. It will occur again. With regard to victims, for family members, friends, if you see someone, a loved one, a friend, a sister, and you notice that there's some changes. They're less social, they've withdrawn. They aren't showing up at work or school. They're more concerned about their abusers or their partner's reaction to things, whether or not they should wear their hair a certain way, get it cut, wear something, do something, as opposed to what they really want. The abuser's voice becomes more important than theirs. If you see them wearing clothes in the summertime, covering up, they're technically probably trying to cover up bruises. And obviously, if you see visible marks, that is clearly a sign that something is going on. What should you do? If you are that person, get help. Call 911 immediately. Get help. You cannot avoid what is inevitable. Get out, get help. We also at the Family Justice Center always give individuals that come in a safety plan. It's a very simple thing. It's individualized for each person. A safety plan is going to look different for everyone, but there are some key components. You want to, if at all possible, put together a bag that you would have access to immediately, whether it's in a car, whether it's outside in a neighbor's house. If you needed to get up and go immediately, you want to have that bag ready and prepared. You want to have some items in there, clothing, documents for yourself, your children, keys, money, things that you would need to get out and to be able to function. Have a code word with a family member or a friend. Maybe have them call you and you talk about a recipe, something that would be benign. That wouldn't alert your partner to the fact that you are trying to get out, but just something that would let them know that you need help. We also tell people to not be in areas that are considered high risk. That would be a kitchen, there are sharp objects there, or a bathroom because there's cement and tile, and you could very easily get hurt in those areas. So try to stay away from those types of rooms, as well as emergency apps. Technology is an amazing thing. There are apps that allow you to immediately contact police and or friends. The Circle of 8, you program it to have 8 friends or family members. If you're in trouble, they will know and will be alerted to that. And then, of course, leave. People oftentimes think that they can change or that it was just something that happened. If it happened once, it's more than likely going to happen again. And something that's not here, and I know State's Attorney Braveboy can appreciate this, we tell people to document. Take account of what's going on, keep a record, take photos, because if you do have to go through the legal or criminal justice system, you want to have evidence. Listen and don't judge. And then lastly, what to do, where can you go? I'm going to direct everyone to the Family Justice Center. It's an initiative of the Circuit Court. As was discussed, we were established in 2016. We are a nationally certified, multi-agency, multidisciplinary collaborative. There are 23 organizations that are all co-located in one building. So just imagine someone needing help, you're traumatized, you're stressed, you don't know where to go. If you had to take the time to speak to everyone that you needed to get help, whether it be police, state's attorney, advocate, counselor, a shelter, telling that story repeatedly over and over again can be re-victimizing. You come into the Family Justice Center, you tell one person what happened, and that one individual is able to direct you to all of the resources that you would need. We call it a one-stop shop resource. And you can go to the next slide. Again, this is just who's there. Obviously, we have the state's attorney's office. There are 7 governmental agencies. The others are all nonprofit organizations that provide every resource you could need, from shelter to counseling to housing, sexual assault legal assistance. We do forensic safe exams as well as HIV/AIDS testing. So as you can see, it makes the process seamless, very simplified, very client-centered. And then lastly, I just want to share with you, these are some of the services, and I'm moving quickly because I know we have a limited amount of time. I just wanted to tell you about a new project that we are undertaking. Very, very excited about this. The Family Justice Center was awarded a grant through the Office of Violence Against Women, and it's called Improving Criminal Justice Responses with Enhanced Technology, access and partnerships. And one thing COVID has done, it's shown us as we are right now that we can still function, work, and do what we need to do with technology. As a result of that, we are now striving to enhance the survivors' access to resources that are provided in the Family Justice Center, and we're going to do it with technology. We know that domestic violence is not a 9 to 5 issue, it's a 24/7 issue, and currently our doors are only open from 8:30 to 5. With this grant, we are now going to be able to expand our hours of operation so that Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, we have extended hours. Thursday will be open until 8 p.m., Friday until 10 p.m., and on Saturday for 10 hours from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. So that's an amazing enhancement because, again, people need assistance and they need it when they need it. I would love to be there 7 days a week, but this is a start for us. And then the other component to this grant is that we are establishing 7 satellite offices around the county and police substations. District 1, 7, as well as District 7, Hyattsville and Fort Washington, as well as Bowie City, Bladensburg, Cottage City, Mount Rainier, the smaller municipalities that are closer to Washington, D.C., but then Bowie State University, because we also know that this is a major issue amongst teens on college campuses. So we are actually going to have an advocate at Bowie State, as well as an advocate or an intake specialist in the Family Justice Center to cover the expanded hours and to be able to provide these services. So we're really excited about this new initiative, and stay tuned, you'll hear more about it. So I will wrap up for now and allow State's Attorney Braveboy to take the floor, and thank you again for the opportunity.
Jump in there, Aisha. My dogs are going crazy, so it's better if I just let you go.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you. I was just saying that it's always difficult to follow Dr. McCain, but I will do my best. But it's great to see you, and thank you so much for the work you're doing. And thank you again, Councilwoman Ivey, for inviting me back again this year. And thank you for the work that you do, because you didn't just become an advocate for victims when you became a council member. I remember you being honored by the Prince George's County Family Crisis Center as a delegate. And we both were delegates several years ago, but so the issues that remained have a bit more important to us then remain important to us now. And so thank you so much. So if you can pull up my slide presentation, and I'll go through mine pretty quickly because I know that there's some questions. Okay, so yes, so if you can go to the next slide. Oh, if you can go back one. Okay. Okay, great, thank you. So, you know, we work really hard at the State's Attorney's Office to address the issue of domestic violence. What we have seen is certainly there has been an upward trend in the number of domestic violence related cases that have come to our office, but in general, we have seen actually a slight downward trend in cases involving intimate partner homicides. And so between 2021 and 2022, we have seen a decrease in the intimate partner homicides, but what we have seen an increase in is other family violence that results in homicides. And so that is a huge problem. And I'll talk a little bit about what we have seen statistically. So we're working, you know, in the community to educate the public. We're also in the courtroom, obviously employing smart and tough prosecutorial strategies to hold perpetrators accountable and to protect victims. And then in Annapolis, we're working to advocate for laws that we believe will protect victims as well. Next slide. So year to date, we've had about 13 homicides, which quite frankly is actually down from last year. But unfortunately, 13 people have lost their lives. 4 of those individuals involved domestic violence incidents. The most recent one, and you may have heard of this, was a case of a 31-year-old defendant who had a criminal history, and he had a prior romantic relationship with a deceased victim. Her name was Remy Howell, 29 years old. Mr. Mitchell is charged with shooting and killing the victim in a parking lot of the Parkview Baptist Church in Landover, so not too far, well, certainly in District 5. So we will continue to keep your council woman up to date on any progress in that case. And so that was a really sad case that highlights again the need for us to continue to focus on the issue of domestic violence. But our family violence cases, we have seen an increase in the number of family violence cases that don't involve intimate partners. And I'll give you a couple of examples. Last year, we saw 3 murder cases involving siblings. 2 were as a result of gun violence, and 1 was a stabbing. And then we also had 3 murders involving an adult son killing their mother. And so, again, these are really just devastating, heartbreaking cases. But this is what we're seeing, unfortunately, in our court system, both civil and criminal. Next slide. So what strategies are we employing? As was mentioned, we have our interagency strangulation protocol. I talked about this extensively last year. I won't go into it in quite a great detail as I did last year. But if you go to the next slide, this is a partnership that our office initiated where we work with dispatchers when the 911 calls are made. If there's an indication of domestic violence, dispatchers will ask, have you been choked or strangled? Once the victim responds, the first responder who comes and is on scene will offer to take the victim to the hospital, and it's Capital Region Health, which has a very important forensic machine that can really document evidence of strangulation. And then there's a follow-up investigation. We collect all of the evidence for our prosecutions, and then we will prosecute those cases zealously. Next slide. We also have what we call a high-risk, high-lethality protocol. This is really important, especially when cases come into our office that are misdemeanor cases, which are the majority of our cases. And misdemeanor doesn't mean that these cases are not serious. They're just not charged as felonies, and which have certain criteria that we have to meet in order to charge a felony. But a lot of our second-degree assault cases, which are misdemeanor cases, they are still serious to us because those kind of instances can escalate to felony cases if we don't address it appropriately at the misdemeanor level, at the district court level. So what we are doing now is we have a high-risk, high-lethality protocol where we look at things like, we look at the abuser. Does the abuser have multiple cases pending? Have they violated in the past bond conditions? Are there pressures? Are they pressuring the victim to recant? Is it a stalking case? Is the victim pregnant? We also look at whether or not strangulation was involved. Is there a weapon involved? And whether or not they have any prior cases involving even the civil petitions for protective orders. So we look at all of that to make decisions on what our position is going to be as it relates to pretrial detention. Next slide. So we take all of this into account. We don't dismiss these cases. Those cases are reviewed by our chief and assistant chief, all of the cases that we deem high risk, high lethality. We will move forward to prosecute those cases without the victim present if we have enough evidence to move forward, because again, our goal is to protect the life of our victim. And so there's a lot of these cases, and I know Dr. McCain knows, victims don't want to participate in the prosecution of their abusers because They believe that this is their loved one. However, we have seen a lot of instances where people have not wanted to move forward, and then they are victimized again, and sometimes it has led, unfortunately, to death. Next slide. And we also, for our lower level domestic offenders, we also have a diversion strategy as well for those who need, intervention with anger management, with substance abuse and other issues that individuals unfortunately might have that lead to violence in their families. And so we do have that for our lower level offenders who we don't want to see graduate into more serious offenses. We do have a diversion option, and we work with the CAFE, which is the Community Advocates for Family and Youth, the Battered Women's Justice Project, and one of the local doctors in our community on that program. Next slide. In Annapolis, we are fighting for change. And so this is, I'll end on this. There's a bill in Annapolis, and I know that former delegate, current councilwoman, Jolene Ivey, she's probably about to pull her hair out. Unfortunately, right now in the law, there is an exemption from prosecution for individuals who commit spousal rape. And that is something that we believe is a thing of the past. We should absolutely not tolerate here in the state of Maryland. So currently, the law generally protects a person who is married to their victim for being prosecuted for rape in the first degree, rape in the second degree, rape in the third degree, and sexual offense in the fourth degree. So this law, we believe, is completely outdated, does not protect victims, and does not respect the rights of women to be protected, and men, quite frankly, too, in an intimate partner relationship. And so we hope that all of you will contact your senators, your delegates, the two committees that are handling this bill, which is the Judiciary Committee on the House side, Judicial Proceedings on the Senate side, and ask that they support the repeal of this spousal defense law. The bills are House Bill 153 and Senate Bill 33. So thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you both so much. One question that comes to mind to me right away is we frequently tell people just leave. And I said it earlier that you can leave. But it seems to me that I've heard that can be the most dangerous time when a person tries to leave. So do you have any advice, any guidance for what to tell someone about leaving?
Sure, I can speak to that. And you are 100% correct. And I'm glad that you brought that up. It is statistically the most dangerous time. Most survivors or victims who've been killed, I should say, it's been during their efforts to leave. So it makes sense. What do? You don't announce it. You have to plan, and you have to have a real clear strategy as to when and how to leave, which goes back to that safety plan. We understand that everyone is not able or ready to leave a situation at a specific time. However, if it's something that you've thought about, or you're finally at a place where you realize that this is not going to change, or my life is in danger, my children are being harmed by this, sit down with someone and come up with a plan. And clearly you don't want to announce that that's what you're doing. It has to be done in a very covert but very strategic manner.
And I totally agree with Dr. McCain. And what I will say is that there are resources out there for individuals who want to leave. Our office has a grant that assists victims in obtaining housing. So we don't want money to be the reason why you stay. And if there's anything that we can do to assist you monetarily, we will. But we do have housing assistance for individuals who want to leave. And I agree completely with Dr. McCain that planning is everything.
Thank you. Yeah, you got to come up with a good plan. Another thing that I've heard is there's some number of times somebody might leave before they actually stay gone. I helped a friend who was in a terrible situation. She did manage to get her husband out of the house with the help of the courts. But, eventually he came back in. I have no idea what's going there now. I don't know. I mean, she hadn't told me in 25 years that we've been friends. I'd had no idea. And then when everything hit the fan, I definitely jumped in to help her, but eventually her husband was back in the house. I don't know if all the things that the counseling they went through, I don't know if that did, solve the problem. I just don't know. But I have heard that it takes a number of times of trying to leave before you're successful. And I think that all of us need to have that in mind with people that we're trying to help, so we don't judge them and we're not surprised when it happens. But do you all have like observations about that? What that is like trying to leave?
Certainly, I can speak to that. We have to recognize and remember that these are individuals. And if we're talking about the victim, she or he loved that individual at one time. And more often than not, they still love their abusers, as strange as that may seem. And there's also the element of, where do I go? You talked about the fact that there are resources, but everyone is not comfortable leaving their home, going into a shelter, or going into an environment that's uncertain. It's almost as if they think, I can live with what I know, but it's the unknown that I'm afraid of. So they'll stay in that situation until it just becomes too dangerous to leave. But yes, statistically, 7 times is that number. And you were so right when you said not to judge. I said it earlier, your job as a friend, a family member, is to listen, and to listen without judgment, and especially without telling someone what to do. Even if you know that it's what they should do, they have to make that decision. You can't make the decision for them. So absolutely, it's something that we have to understand, that there are a myriad of reasons why people don't leave those situations right away, from where to go, lack of resources, their children, and just not knowing. Lack of information is a real problem. I can't tell you how many times people have come to the Family Justice Center, and when they leave, they're so filled and overwhelmed because they just had no idea that so many resources were available to them, or that people really cared or understood what they were going through and had the resources to help them move beyond the place they were in. So lack of information is also key to reasons why.
You just muted yourself for a second, but you were correct. Yeah, the lack of information is a real problem. And the Family Justice Center, wow, you all really do a fantastic job. I am so glad that you're there. And you've been there going on 6 years. Have you been there the whole time, right?
I have. I am the first and only director since we opened the doors. I was there. So yeah, and we've grown quite a bit. Attorney Braveboy talked about the forensic equipment. We also have the Cortex flow camera that we're able to also do strangulation exams. We're working with the hospital as well to have mobile sane nurses that would be available on call, because clearly it's not something that you would have staffing for regularly, but if needed, we'd be able to call a sane nurse that would come over and do that exam. So yes, we've been there, we're growing and doing great work. I will add, this past year with COVID, we have seen more clients than we have in our entire 5-year history. Over 1,700 clients were served last year. And I will add that that's in part because we have made the process easier with remote intakes. We aren't expecting people to come in. So we're doing a lot more of that virtually. And that has really enhanced access and the willingness to get services, because you don't have to leave or come to the facility to get resources.
Yeah, that's excellent. I mean, there's so many things that we are, I guess, some benefits that have come from the pandemic. And that's one of them is just the sudden realization that there's so much we can do virtually. Like we're here tonight. We didn't have to leave our homes to do it. You didn't have to find a parking space or anything. It's like amazing. So I hope that this is something that's going to outlive the pandemic, which of course I hope is over very soon. But State's Attorney Braveboy, tell me, like, what are the things that you're noticing, and what can you tell us to do when we find out or we suspect that somebody might be being abused? How do we turn them in, for example?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing you have to do is really be that safe space for the individual who is the victim to just speak to without judgment, without telling them what to do, because one of the things that the abusers often take from their victims is control, the power to make decisions for themselves. And so while they may want to ask for your help, don't be so heavy-handed with them, because you don't want to turn them off. You want them to want to listen and to get the help that they need. In my office, oftentimes, my attorneys, they have learned really how to be counselors, how to assist someone thinking through the issue, thinking through how am I going to survive outside once I move forward with this case. Those are the questions those are real world, real life questions. And a lot of the victims are very, very broken inside because they have been beat down physically and mentally for years. And so patience is everything. You've got to be patient with the victims. Let them, if they want to go back, you can't force them to not. You can only be that safe space that when they're ready, they can come back to you. And that's what our office provides. Again, we will move forward with cases without our victims if we think that we have enough evidence to move forward, because the reality is abuse does not get better if it's not addressed. And so our goal is to address the abuse and the abuser and help our victim become stronger. But you're not going to be able to do that if the victim thinks that you're the enemy, right? That you're trying to just tell them what to do. So it's really important that when you, not being judgmental, being extremely patient, and really just offering resources. And that's why we have so many resources, not just in our office, but we partner. And I can't tell you how we would not be successful without the support of the Family Justice Center, because they're able to help us keep our victims, in a position where they want to move forward and that they can move forward financially, physically, mentally, all of those things. And I'm forever grateful for Chief Judge Adams for coming up with this idea and having the good sense to appoint Dr. McCain because she has just been just amazing and such a great resource for our community.
One thing that you just mentioned is something that I did just get in the chat, which was about services that we offer the abuser. Okay, so if they're not going to jail, like what do we do to help that abuser not continue that behavior? The friend that I was helping, they did have, I think it was through the Family Crisis Center, there was some counseling, but I don't know if that is continuing today.
Well, I know, and I'll let Dr. McCain talk about what the Family Crisis Center offers. We do have a diversion program now, as I mentioned, for our lower level offenders, where we do work with the Family Justice Center and other providers to provide that level of counseling and addiction treatment and other services that might be needed. And what we're finding, especially with the lower level abusers, is that victims sometimes don't want to get the person in trouble. They don't want to see them in jail. They don't want to see them in prison, because quite frankly, for some people, that's cutting off their source of income. And I think we just have to be real world about this. And so we know that jailing everyone, number one, is not going to happen. And number two, it may not be the answer in every single case, and we have to be realistic. And so being able to offer diversion for in certain types of cases, in our high risk, high lethality cases, is not going to happen because we're concerned about the preservation of the life of the victim. In our strangulation cases and in our felony cases, again, we're talking about people who have committed very serious crimes where their victim may face death as the next escalation. But for many of our cases, which are lower level offenses, we're able to work with our partners to provide diversion services.
So I'm going to jump in on this one. I quite frankly, if we're going to be real about this, and the goal is to really eradicate and address domestic violence effectively, we have to look at the situation in totality, and to provide services strictly to one side of the equation and ignore the other is really not addressing the problem. Having said that, the Family Justice Center does not provide any resources to abusers. Our services are limited exclusively for victims. Whether or not there are other programs, agencies, resources, they should exist, and I definitely think that abusers need help. Coincidentally, today, the Violence Against Women Act was reauthorized in Congress, and it includes language now and provisions for restorative practice, is what it's being called. And that really does take into account for certain cases, which, as State's Attorney Braveboy said, it would not be those who are within the high risk, high lethality category. But let's just say it's someone who a first time incident, or it wasn't what would be considered a severe abuse or a felony. That individual could be eligible for some other sanctions outside of the criminal justice system. It may be that they're allowed to go to counseling or to do something else in lieu of going through the system. And we as advocates, we really had to fight for the language to be, or for the bill to be where it is today, because initially there were no rail guards, if you will. Anyone could have been eligible for a restorative practice sentence. So, I think we're moving in a direction where there is recognition for the fact that we can't just put all of our attention on the victim without providing any level of support or resources for abusers. I think we just have to be very careful and make sure that when appropriate, that they are being held accountable and that survivors are safe.
Well, thank you so much to both of you for coming on tonight. There have been a few people have asked if they could have the slides, so we're going to get anybody who wants a copy of the slides. Please send your email address to Monica Young. She's on, oh, there she is. She is up on there. So just go to the chat. You can just send it to her if you're not trying to share it with the whole group. And she will get those out to you. I'm sure both Dr. McCain and State's Attorney Braveboy would be very happy to share them. And just thank you both so much. I don't know if you have any closing words that you would like to end on.
Well, I just again want to thank you, Councilwoman, for inviting us back here. This is such an important service that you're providing to your community. I did want to let everyone know that if you need services from the Office of the State's Attorney, you can reach out to us. We have a new website, actually. It's www.pgsao.org. I did put it in the chat, but I'll put it in the chat again so that you can click on it and hopefully visit us. But if you do need services, please, please, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you.
And so by also just thanking you, Councilmember Ivey, for hosting this event, keeping this subject out there because it's real. People are still suffering in silence, and silence perpetuates the violence. So please continue to reach out. As State's Attorney Braveboy said, resources are available. The Family Justice Center is there to support, to assist, and to help. I would also say that we now have a foundation All of that information can be found on our website, which is www.pgcfamilyjusticecenter.org. It's on the slides. And if anyone is interested in volunteering, we also accept volunteers. So please check out our website and know that we are a resource for the community and we welcome you. And just thank you again.
Thank you so much. And I would like to note that we're at the 20-year mark from the Beltway Sniper. And I heard from Mildred Muhammad, who spoke at an earlier Love Shouldn't Hurt event a couple of years ago. That was like the ultimate domestic violence. I mean, he did that to intimidate her and to try to find her and kill her. And so many other people were affected. So, and then at that time, it seemed like she wasn't embraced in the way that we would embrace her today, just because we didn't understand the community. I mean, did not understand that she was actually a victim as well.
Absolutely.
So thank you for all you all are doing. And thank you for everyone who came tonight to listen in, and please help spread the word. Really appreciate you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.